Hey, everybody, it's another episode with In Between the Niches with Aaron Hoff and Ron Hoyle at Core Integrated Wealth. And today I'm sitting with Aaron, one of our portfolio managers, and we're going to go over distributions, contributions, and some things you need to know going into the year 2026. So, Aaron, where would you like to start?
We could start with just normal taxable brokerage accounts. We think of these accounts as more of like amplified savings account that you can utilize for funding short-term or long-term goals. But these are the accounts we like to spend first whenever people that we are working with need distributions because of the tax consequences.
Now, did you say, sorry to interrupt, but do you want to spend them first simply because inheritance for the kids, or they want to go through that one? Can you explain that a little bit?
Just by saving on taxes and the way that the accounts are, typically people have three different types of accounts. You have your 401k from your employer. You have a traditional IRA if you started one yourself, or you've rolled one from a previous employer, rolled a 401k into an IRA. Then you could have a Roth IRA, which isn't as popular, but isn't as common. Very popular accounts, the best type of accounts you can get. But this is also another different type of retirement account. And then you have a taxable brokerage account. So the first two are qualified accounts, 401ks, traditional IRAs, Roth IRAs. That means they're funded with money that hasn't been taxed yet. And then you have your taxable accounts, which is just like a savings account. You get money, you go deposit it into the account, and then gets invested. The reason we spend these first is typically because of the taxes are cheaper. IRAs, we try to ingrain in people that those dollars are for retirement only. So you don't want to take early distributions from IRAs. There's a 10% penalty there that you have to worry about that the IRS will give you. And also you have to be 59 and a half before you can take any distributions for them to be qualified distributions. So that's why I say that the brokerage accounts are the ones we typically spend first. Even if you are over that 59 and a half, it just makes sense. Whenever we manage the accounts, we can buy and sell. We can place trades based on the distribution amount that you may need and try to reduce your taxable consequences as low as possible. But those rates, they start at, you can get a 0% rate on capital gains distributed from a taxable account, but your income has to be less than $50,000 for a single filer, and I think it's $98,900 for a joint couple. And when I say capital gains tax, that's the amount the investment has grown after your contribution. So if I put $10,000 into an investment, it's at $15,000. I sell the entire $15,000. That $5,000 additional gain is what is taxed at either 0, 15, or 20%. Right. And with those percentages are typically lower than people's income rates. So that's why we prefer those accounts first. And then so that is a capital gains tax for the taxable accounts. Any other distributions from a Roth, 401k, or an IRA, those are taxed at your ordinary income levels. So it's like you're getting another paycheck for the year. If you take out $5,000, that gets added to your tax return as $5,000 of income that you earned that year, because none of that money has been taxed yet. So that's why the tax rate is a little bit higher there. Okay. And also, when it comes to annuities, it's the same setup as the qualified traditional IRA or 401k versus a non-qualified account. So the taxable brokerage account, those are considered non-qualified accounts because the funds are, like I said, they're after taxes have been taken out. So if you have a qualified annuity, then any distribution you take will be the same as an IRA. Just gets taxed at ordinary income rates. But if you have a non-qualified one, the earning portion is taxed, kind of like a capital gains tax, but that will still be taxable at your current tax rate. And then we have there's some And pensions as well. Pensions are typically ordinary income anytime you take a distribution.
Right. It's amazing as you're going through this, I'm tracking with you, but it certainly helps us understand why people get confused with all this stuff, because you just throw out like wheelbarrow loads full of information. Mm-hmm. And so if people have these accounts, they're not sure what to do with them. They're not sure what the best way to do it. That's why they give us a call and say, walk me through this, because I have these various accounts and they all affect me differently.
Absolutely. And a big value we add is when someone inherits assets from somebody who may have passed away, because there might be a few different accounts that they receive, and then they're typically confused on how they should structure the accounts or which accounts they should use for what, and what needs to be, what they need to consider before making any changes to those types of accounts.
And to make it even more difficult for people, the government decided a few years ago, it used to be when you inherited any money that you can just take it out over the course of your life. Well, now they want it all out in 10 years. So if you've got a sizable chunk of money, whether it's pre-tax, if it's pre-tax especially, like somebody's inherited IRA, you have 10 years to get that out of there, and you've got, because the government wants taxed on all that, and that's a whole nother strategy altogether, depending on the person's age and the amount of money.
Right. Yep. So that it was previously considered a stretch IRA whenever you could use your own life expectancy for those distributions, but that has changed with the Secure Act, and they do require those accounts, even a Roth IRA, which isn't required to make RMDs, required minimum distributions. That's where the stretch IRA comes from, is having that required minimum distribution component added to the qualified accounts. So even the Roth IRA has to be distributed within 10 years, even though there's no taxes or anything like that to account for. But most people will just move those into taxable accounts, or if they have their own, you can only contribute a certain amount to the Roth IRA and traditional IRA. For 2026, if you're under 50, that amount is $7,500. After 50 to 59, it's $8,600. And then 60 to 63, it's the same. But that's the same for both Roth and traditional IRAs. And once you make a certain amount of money, you aren't allowed to make deductible traditional IRA contributions, but you can go ahead and make a Roth IRA contribution there.
And I don't want to get you off track of where you're trying to go with this conversation, but is this a good place to start talking about the Roth 401k or those kind of contributions? Simply because if you make a certain amount of money and you can't get any tax write-off benefits from it anyway, I think a Roth 401k is a really great way to set aside tax-free money for retirement.
Yeah, absolutely. If your employer has a plan that provides those, they are less common than just a traditional 401k, but a lot of people have been offering those recently, and especially they're the most beneficial for people who are earlier in their careers, while your tax liabilities are low. It's good to go ahead and take advantage of creating some Roth assets, because so I talked about your taxable brokerage accounts being the first amount of money that we like to spend. Then next would be your traditional IRA assets. That's typically whenever those required minimums start. And then we like to utilize the Roth assets as the last bucket of money, because that, depending on people's situation, but that is the best account you have at that point, because all of that has been growing tax-free, and there is no taxes owed on any distributions from the account. So that makes things very, very nice. And we invest the different accounts by the timeline whenever you're going to utilize the money from it. So Roths are typically aggressive. We want as much tax-free growth as we can get, because you can't get that anywhere else in any other accounts. And but there are limits to how much you can contribute each year. Typically for an employee, that would be a percentage of their annual salary. So an employee can elect to defer $24,500 if they are 50 years old or younger, or 49 and less. And then at age 50, you get another additional catch up for $8,000. So that would be, what is that? $32,500 for your contribution limit for the year, which is the highest contribution allowed for the retirement accounts. Because a traditional IRA starting in 26 would be $7,500. So we like to encourage clients to contribute as much as possible to those 401ks. For that reason, just because it's the easiest account to save in with the highest amount, and it's better whenever people, it's coming out of your paycheck, you don't see it, you don't touch it, so it's easier to save that way. But also employers will typically match the contributions up to a certain point, 3% to 5%. I have heard of more, but that's very rare. And they can contribute. The limit for that is about $72,000 a year.
Right.
So that's with employee and employer limits. So
I know some of our conversations, when people are, if they got 10, 12, 15 years left of working and they've done really well with savings for their 401k, their simple, whatever their retirement plan is, all that money's taxable. And a lot of times people forget that this money is, they could have $1 million, but the government owns about 30% of that. They haven't got taxed on it yet. So a lot of times, depending on the situation, we'll have conversations that say, you've really done well in that taxable bucket and setting a lot aside. Let's start setting more in this non-tax bucket and really start offsetting that. So when you need to start drawing those dollars. So it's sometimes, depending on the situations, it's a good idea if you have really funded those pre-tax accounts really well, really start looking at those after-tax accounts.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, it's good. We talk about diversification in the sense of investment selection and how your money is allocated. So that way, if one sector of the market may go down, the other sector should be able to offset that. It's also good to diversify your tax liabilities, especially in retirement, and especially with the stretch IRA being eliminated. You're putting, if maybe you pass away, but you have a lot of taxable assets, that tax burden will go on to your heirs. So we want to have a good mix of all of the accounts, those 3 accounts at least, just so that way, you have another layer of diversity with the tax liabilities. There's also Roth conversions, people that have large taxable.
When is a good time to do that? I mean, there's really no cookie cutter, and there's no one set answer for that.
No, I mean, the best time I see, the time that it makes the most sense is if you have a large savings set aside, so you have to have cash, but typically it's your first year of retirement. Whenever you go from earning a large amount to maybe not earning any money, that's your best time to start making those conversions, because you're not going to be making the same amount on your tax return. So you can try to either go back up to what you're used to paying for taxes as long as you have the money saved. It doesn't really make sense to convert a Roth with the IRA money or the 401k money. So because that just reduces the account by that amount. So if you have the money set aside, the ideal time to do that is your first year of retirement, whenever your income is as low as it's been for a long time. That way you can afford the tax hit. And then after that, you can you can plan to do it systematically. That's typically over a 3 or 4 year period is a good number that we find. And then that way you will, if you don't have Roth assets already, you will start to save those.
I'm glad you said that too, because I was going to have you clarify that too. It's like, even though it's the first year when you're no longer receiving a paycheck, usually takes 2 or 3 years to really lighten that tax burden.
Oh yeah, not many people have enough to convert their entire 401ks in the first year. And also you want to worry about Medicare and all of that too.
I want to ask you about, what is some of the stress you see when people, like what we deal with a few clients, now that they are going to retire, their paycheck's not coming in anymore. Now they've got to start taking money from their investments. A lot of people panic about that. A lot of people get nervous about that. What's just some key points to make to somebody who's getting ready to go into retirement, and then say, look, you're not going to get your paycheck anymore, but this is where your paycheck's coming from, and it's okay, and it's going to last. Where's a good way to touch base on that? Because I know a lot of people get nervous about that.
Oh yeah, it's more of a, we wear multiple hats, and the psychology of money is a big issue for everybody, I would say. And yeah, when you've spent your whole career planning, saving,
accumulating,
watching your money grow, watching everything you've worked hard to do continue to work for you, it does hurt to know that you're not going to be adding any more dollars to that amount. Some people, and then watching the accounts just go down year after year is definitely hard too.
But that's also where the time segmentation of those dollars come in too. That's like, I know part of our strategy that, and again, there's no cookie cutter. Everybody has a different approach, or everybody needs a different approach, but we take those funds for the first 1, 2, 3 years, depending on how they're situated, depending on what their risk tolerance is. And here is your paychecks for the next 2 or 3 years. This other money's still working for you. Like when you're 20 years old, you can say, I've got 30, 40 years before I'm retired. I'm not worried about it. Well, this chunk of money, even in your 60s, you're not going to touch for 15 or 20 years. We can treat it somewhat the same way.
Right. Yeah. So I think the thing that eases people's anxieties the most is just having a plan set up years before retirement's even a thought, because most people don't. Even our clients, a lot of people come in, they've got 5 years left to work, and they haven't saved much. So solving those problems are fun. It's harder, but the people that have been doing things right from the beginning, typically,
it's not a major overhaul for them.
It's not hard for them to understand what the accounts they have and what they're going to be for, but it still is hard because they're used to saving and earning, and then they go from saving, earning to just straight spending. That's a hard change for anybody. But having the right accounts, like we call them buckets, and that's based off of the first 5 years, 5 to 10 years, or even earlier. Short-term goals, 5 to 10 years, and then 10 to 15, and then later on in retirement. So having the correct accounts definitely helps people sleep easy at night. It's a good idea to know what type of lifestyle you want to have in retirement, how much it costs you, your actual expenses for the years, how much your vacations cost, how much your new car is going to cost. But once you have a good foundation for that information, then having understanding what the accounts are going to be doing for you and how you'll be okay is much easier to understand. And then anytime there's good market years, that's just added money to your plan.
Well, see, on that point, I think it's a good thing to land on for a second, too. A lot of times people have the perception, I'm not going to work anymore, not going to get a paycheck anymore. I got this chunk of money, and it's never going to make money for me anymore. And that's not the case. It's like we're still investing, we're still making money. And a lot of times we have opportunities to sweep those gains and convert those to cash. So now there's more liquid money to spend in that current year while that money's still growing for you. And sometimes I think people have the perception that I'm going to spend it all the first year. You're really not. You're going to spend it over the next 20, 30 years.
And we have a bunch of fancy technology that will show them, hey, with a bunch of different simulations that, hey, as long as if this is the necessary income that you need with Social Security and all that, this is what we're supplementing. This is how long those funds would last in the worst case scenario. And here's a good scenario, maybe some best case scenarios. We typically don't even go that far in the best case scenarios because we always look at the worst case. And then there's products that help to alleviate some of that stress. But once they come in and they hear, okay, you're going to be okay from what we have, that typically is all they really need. And then the ones that have annuities or pensions, those are the people who are the least anxious for sure.
Right.
They call it mailbox money, and they say, in retirement it's much easier whenever you just have a steady income coming in, and as long as your lifestyle is not too lavish for your savings, you should should be fine.
Yeah, I think some of the fun ones for me is when people say, okay, I'm going to retire and I can live on $30,000 a year. I can just really tighten down the pennies and not spend a whole lot. And then as you have the conversation and they get a little more comfortable, it's like, oh, well, my money's still going to work for me. Well, I'd really like to spend 40 a year. And usually that $30,000 a year person becomes an $80,000 a year person. Yeah. And then it's fun to put together investments and say, well, between Social Security, pensions, other things, and some money from your investments, you're living on quite a bit more than that. Like, I had no idea I could spend that kind of money or live on that kind of money in retirement. And it's fun just to see the stress come off of them.
Yeah, but people have personalities, so people that spend money keep spending money.
Yeah,
people
true.
that don't spend money typically don't spend money.
Right.
No matter how much we try to egg them on, or their loved ones. But yeah, a lot of times these people have worked really hard for it, so they're kind of sentimental about it. But when they're getting a paycheck, you're using it to live your life.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I know I've had that conversation several times where people are really, really good savers and they're going into retirement. They're really worried about it. And I'm just like, guys, you're not going to change. You're a good saver. If anything, we got to work on you to spend a little bit of money and enjoy your retirement, because you're just not going to go the other way. That pendulum is not going to swing that other way when you retire.
Yeah, for sure. So.
But I think the biggest thing for people is when they're getting ready for retirement. I think retirement projection is huge, because a lot of people come here and they even if they've worked with another advisor, they don't have a roadmap. They don't have a projection. It's just save, grow, don't touch it. But the fact is, you're going to have to touch it. You're going to have to pull it out, and you need to know, what is the safe speed limit for me to do that? What speed am I comfortable driving down the road? At what rate am I comfortable taking money from my investments? And I think just having those kind of conversations, and it's nice when the light goes off in someone's mind and you see that, it's like, oh, I really can spend money. I'm really going to be okay. It's just as much as a strategy to save it, as maybe even more so than accumulating it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think the reason why people, when people come in for their reviews, their investment reviews and meetings with us, I think the biggest thing that I hear is, oh, okay, I feel better.
Yeah.
Just talking with y'all makes me feel better. Most people think, okay, my account is, say it's $1 million, that it will always be $1 million. No, it continues to grow with you. And if you're pulling out less than it's growing, that account will continue to be that large, or $1 million. So yeah, I think, and then giving people the 4% rule, which says if you pull from your accounts at 4% a year, that they'll continue to grow and last, because that's just a low conservative return point that you can normally meet over a 10-year period. The markets tend to be up about 70% of the time. So as long as you have that perspective of the accounts, it helps. And then any years that we have good years, like I said, that just gives those people extra relief.
Well, and I think the point you said with once they come talk to us, they feel better. And I think that's a really good point to make. A lot of times people come here, maybe they've worked with somebody else, maybe they haven't, but when they realize this is going to be an ongoing conversation, this is, I call it kind of like a marriage. We're going to be talking on a regular basis, communicating on a regular basis. It's not, we're just going to take your money, put it here, and you're never going to talk to us again. People kind of want some hand-holding as they go through this retirement thing. And the thing that's really fun to watch is, and maybe in the beginning they're nervous, within 2 or 3 months of working with us, they become very comfortable. They know they can come in anytime they want. They know we're just not going to stop talking to them.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good. Yeah, it's good to have someone that's there to help you. I mean, you have professionals for your health, you have professionals for your finances,
That's a good
you
point.
have professionals for your insurance. So it's good to have someone there. I know even in my life, if I have to work on my car, I call my brother. He's a mechanic, so I like to have that person. And I listen to him more than I listen to Google, because he actually knows what he's doing. Yeah, or YouTube. So we like to be that sounding board for people. Also give them options for other ideas for what they could do with their money. But typically, whenever people have the right account set up and they've been preparing and planning for retirement, they aren't anxious, I would say. They're the least anxious people. I mean, the people who are trying to retire early and they don't have it, but they can still do it from the projections, they are the most anxious. But it's also knowing that we're here to help them and work with them that typically helps them out. But And then we were talking about RMDs earlier. A lot of people who have planned correctly don't utilize those RMDs.
Right.
They don't need those RMDs for their income.
Right.
Their biggest concern at that point is taxes. So a lot of people want to make less and spend, or they would rather make less and not have to pay taxes than make a bunch of money and have to pay a bunch of taxes. So that's also a psychology thing. And helping them with those RMDs, which have changed recently. I mean, so RMD, just to recap, is required minimum distribution, and they base how much they would like for you to take from that account each year on the value at the end of the year prior. And this is just the IRS's way of getting that tax money that they haven't taken from that amount. They want you to pay that before you die. And so they use your life expectancy. So before, the age that you were required to start those distributions was 72 and a half. They bumped that up to 70, or no, it was 70 and a half. They bumped that age up to 73 for anyone born before 1959. And then after 1959, now it's bumped up to 75. That's because people are living a little bit longer, so they still think they'll still get their money out of them. So, but a lot of the times, whenever they've had if you have the correct accounts doing the correct things for you, those RMDs are more of a tax burden than they are an income play. But you've also got the qualified charitable distributions that you can utilize. The IRS says if you give to a charity, you can give up to $100,000 a year.
And now that's straight out of your, and that's if it comes straight out of your IRA and it goes straight to a 501c3 and you're not touching it in between, correct?
Yeah, exactly.
And it's still, and then whatever you send lowers your tax burden.
Yeah, say your RMD for the year, you've saved up a bunch in your qualified assets, and your RMD is about $100,000. You could give, that's your requirement. So no matter what, that's getting added to your taxable income. But if you go ahead if you have charities and you're charitably inclined, you can give all of that amount to charities. They don't have to be one charity. It could be, we have some clients that do it all year long, $100 at a time, $1,000 at a time. And that goes taken directly off of your RMD liability. So you could owe as little as zero if that's the case.
Now, you another point we can touch on as well, very similar to this, if someone has highly appreciated stock, maybe it was given to them. If someone passes away and you inherit their stock, you get a stepped up cost basis. It's very tax efficient. But maybe you bought the stock a long time ago, or your mom or dad gave you the stock before they died. You now have that lower cost basis. So now we have this very highly appreciated stock. What was bought for $1 is now worth $100 a share. And if you sell that, you're going to pay a whole lot of taxes on it. They can also donate that stock to a 501c3, correct?
Yep. That's another way of making a qualified charitable distribution. That's a little bit more involved, and also you can set up different types of accounts to help with the tax burden there. But yes, you can give shares of the stock rather than giving the cash, but it wouldn't be a requirement for an RMD because it's not a taxable account.
It's just if you're charitably minded.
Right. Yep. What we tell a lot of people is it's either, if we can't do that, if they don't want to give it away and they do want their heirs to inherit it, then they just need to die with the stock. And that's when that step up in cost basis, like you said, comes into play. And a lot of people now, since the stretch IRA, going back to that, since that 10-year period has been placed on those qualified accounts, they start using those qualified accounts, if they can handle the tax burden now, to pay for their or to supplement their income in retirement, rather than using their brokerage account, like we said, the first spender.
Right.
So that way they can give more of the taxable accounts, so that step up in basis comes in play to their heirs, so the heirs aren't being hit with a big tax burden.
All this kind of reminds me of other conversations we've had. So many times you hear in the investment world, oh, I have 3 or 4 models. I have these 4 models that I created, and I put you in this one, this one, this one, or this one. This is a really good example of why you just don't have models. Everything needs to be a customized approach. Everybody has a different situation. And you made a really good point earlier when you said, talking about working with the investment person, the tax person. And that's something that we do here to bring more value add to all the clients and anybody that refer to us, is we just don't worry about the investments. We talk with the tax people. We talk with the estate planning attorneys. We get all those people together, so you're not like this ping pong ball bouncing in between all these different professionals. If you had a tax person for a long time you trusted, and we're new to your life, and we recommend you do something, if you call your tax person, they might say, well, did they say this, or did you ask them this? And then the frustration starts to set in. So what we do is we bring all those people to the table, either physically or over the phone, and we have that conversation that's best suited for you. And I think that's a real big value add too. I'm glad you said that a little bit ago.
Absolutely, yep. We're here for your financial well-being, just as like your doctor is with your well-being in general. And we are not tax professionals. We do deal with taxes a lot. I am a certified financial planner, which means I've studied taxes a little bit more than I have to do this job, but we still always refer to the CPA whenever we're making changes that will make larger taxable liabilities.
The last thing we want to do is create a headache for anybody December 31st or April 15th.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we want to avoid that.
Like I said earlier, people would rather not make as much money and pay less taxes than make a lot of money and pay taxes.
Right.
They, again, that's coming out of their pockets, and that hurts more than the pain is much more impactful than the rewards.
Yeah,
so.
For sure. Well, Aaron, anything else that you wanted to address or let us know to make sure that people should be thinking about when it comes to either contributions or distributions?
Nope, not really. Just give us a call if you have any questions.
Okay. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope this was helpful. And if you don't mind, when you're seeing these videos, any feedback's appreciated. We're not just going to focus on taxes and dollars and growth of accounts. We're going to talk about other things that affect people's lives. One of the things we're going to do is some segmentations with segments with people that have been clients for years. And one I'm going to ask the very scenario you said, retire early, and the account still does okay, and they're nervous about retiring, but it works out okay. And we've got a client that's been a client for years, and I'm sure him and his wife will come back on. They've done an earlier podcast with me, but now they've been a client for like 15 years, tell their story, and he did retire early. It's like, hey, I'm thinking about retiring. The next week I get a phone call. I'm retired. Okay, let's go from here. So
just hope it works.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Thanks for joining us. Anything we can do for you guys, feel free to reach out to Core Integrated Wealth. It's Aaron and Ron. Thank you for your time.
Ciao.